welcome everyone to another episode of the Verisian Community Podcast. I am absolutely delighted and honored to welcome two guests to today's episodes, Mr. Shadab and Mr. Rahul. Welcome to the episode. Rahul, you're in Germany, Düsseldorf. How's the weather there?
Thank you, Thomas. It's pretty cold out there, and it's our pleasure, I think, to be with you on this podcast. Thanks for inviting us.
And Shadab, welcome as well. You're a little bit farther. I'm in London. It's a little bit later in the day. How's everything in Bangalore, Shadab?
So first, thank you for inviting us. And weather is as usual in Bangalore. It's great actually. So it's very pleasant. And yeah, it's a little late, but it's in daytime.
And Bangalore's weather is, I think it's a lot better than Delhi and especially Mumbai as well, right?
I mean, there is
There's no
no
comparison.
comparison.
I
I mean,
appreciate it.
yeah, Bangalore and Pune, two cities in India that stand out in terms of weather. So it's like within 5-10 degrees Celsius whole year, and
Amazing. Yeah.
in terms of pollution as well. So it's great.
Yeah, I have my roots from Hyderabad as well, so yeah, it's not as pleasant, but yeah, it is still better, I would say.
I mean, food compensates for that.
So,
I agree.
gentlemen, it's a pleasure, and we got the next half hour to talk about clinical programming. So let me first start with you, Shadab. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background? Maybe answer why did you get into clinical programming, and what made you stuck to the profession?
Okay, so I graduated from computer science engineering in 2014, and I got into it by mistake. So
Okay.
there was call from HR, and she asked me, okay, there is this project. I never heard of SAS because once you are in the computer science, you hear about all these languages, C, and Python and all these, but I never heard about SAS. So when she said SAS, I heard SAP. I said, okay, it's not far from
The
home.
company.
I can go. Yep, SAP project, actually project from SAP. So I was in TCS. So they have these different projects where you get a call and they'll tell you a little bit about. So I had SAP. Okay, I said okay, let's go there. I went there and it turned out to be something else. But I still joined because it's somewhere in data analysis and all these things, and I didn't know anything. And first
Yeah.
2 year, to be honest, I was clueless that what I am doing, because if you are in an IT industry working for a pharma company on a role as a statistical programmer, that I mean, on such early stage in your career, it doesn't add up. But yeah, later when I was doing, and there were moments I tried to, like, because once you are attached to something, like I want to go to web development or these kind of technologies, so you try to find a way out. But there were moments like I saw there was one study where, I mean, there were 34 subjects in late phase cancer and all of them died. I couldn't sleep that night. I mean, and
Wow.
that moment when you see that, okay, these are not just rows and there is a patient behind every row and there is a story. So at the time, then slowly I there are there were times like I got far better opportunities in terms of other things in other domains, but I chose not to leave because it was just more fulfilling, actually, to be honest. So that's how I came into, and there was like I had to unlearn so many things just to stay in the field and then learn again from a different perspective. So that was another thing as well.
What are some of those things that you had to unlearn?
Think that with when you are from a computer science background, that okay, the programming is everything. But when you come into industry which sits on intersection of programming, statistics and pharma, and then you have to make sense of all three things, you need to give up some things, like, okay, programming is just a tool and
Yeah.
our goal is to achieve something else.
Yeah.
And then you have to understand the outputs, and you'll see things in a different perspective. For example, I mean, it happens with all domains. If you are coming from pharma background or statistics background, you are into that domain and restricted yourself, and we are sometimes not able to look beyond that. So that is one thing, that you need to give up some things and acquire something else. So
heavy story. That late stage one. It's yeah. It's there's real people behind the data, and you're dealing with life and death. Huh?
Yeah, I mean that initially there was a lot of, there are some difficulties as well, like to adapt to such kind of scenario when you first notice that what is happening. But yeah, then you get the appetite for it, and then there is some compartmentalization. Sometimes you don't see what is behind the data, but yeah, subconsciously you need to be aware of that fact. That is what something I believe, I try to believe actually, because that at the end of the day ensures the quality.
And Rahul, tell our listeners a little bit about your background. What made you stay in the field, and tell us maybe some interesting.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Thomas. And I think I would say when I look back and give you that answer, why did I come to this field of statistical programming and chose to stay here? I think I was destined to do this. I am a graduate in pharmacy, and I still remember in my third year of college, I think it would be 2007. I was thinking, what would I do? I don't want to do the local marketing job. I don't even want to be a pharmacist. What would I do? That's when I came to know about SaaS. And I asked everyone I knew. No one knew what SaaS is. I talked to industry experts. There were some experts who would come to the college and speak about it, speak about the company and the careers. And I asked them, like, what do you know anything about SaaS? I have
Yeah,
read it, but I don't know what it is.
yeah,
And they kind of didn't know about it because they were into that kind of, they were more into manufacturing and didn't know much about the development around it. They were more about research, not around development.
yeah, yeah,
And then it was difficult for me to choose the path because now I would say I had the privilege of doing that when I started my career. I started as a document control specialist. I worked at the clinical site. I have designed the CRF. I've done database development, and then finally I came into statistical programming. And I think now that I know what I'm doing, I cannot go anywhere now. So and yeah, it's that attachment that you have with the data, that understanding that it's not just data, it's a cause that you are serving. At the end of the day, it's the patients who are waiting, and at some point in time, if the drug approves, you would give back to the society in one way or the other. And I had experience on both the sides what Shadab shared. So there was a trial that I was working in, and I think all of the subjects, but two of them were only live, and the company chose to still give the treatment to them. So that was kind of something I like. That yeah, I mean,
yeah,
at the end of the day, company wants to earn profit, but at some point in time, they're also looking at the patient lives. They had the option of closing the trial and running away from there, but they didn't choose to do so. The other part of the story is, which kind of motivates me, is the success story. There was this trial that I was working on, which was showing around 74% of overall survival rate. So, and it was like pleasure to be part of kind of those studies of those drugs, which are now in the market and treating the patients.
I mean, what a beautiful thing to say that you're effectively living out your destiny.
I would say so. I mean, all the tasks or all the positions that I held before in my career, I did learn, and I think that gives me the connect of how the process works in the industry. So I know I can probably jump into their shoes and think what they would be thinking while
Yeah,
doing something or while answering something. So it gives me a perspective, and I think that gives me a better understanding. But yes, I mean, worked on those profiles. I'm not saying anything is bad, but for me, I
yeah,
think this is where my interest is
yeah.
and
So
always was, I would say.
amazing, beautiful. So to stay with you, Raul, in terms of automation. Now, everyone talks about automation in software in whatever field. Before we talk specifics, and you've been involved in CRF design. What does automation mean to you in clinical programming, and where's the the biggest potential benefit of automation, given that quality is so important because you're dealing with, well, life and death basically.
I think that's both a pro and con for our industry. At the end of the day, we are dealing with lives. For automation, yes, we want to automate many things that we can. And there are many things that we can do, but at least we can start with some things. Um, I've been part of automations, some of the automations that I've carried myself, and I have always believed that something which can be done again and again manually, it's better to automate. To give an example, when I started with CRF designing, there was this manual process of designing and copying the fields and everything, and it was a lot of time and manual effort. I was not a pro in JavaScript, but it kind of works in the Adobe PDF. So I just kind of gathered some snippets and made it to work. And what I was doing in 3 days, I could do it in like 15 seconds. The point here is that let's not try to achieve everything at a time. Let's do maybe step by step, maybe one thing at a time, and then see where we can go and what is the impact. Uh, it's easier, it's much easier to do in software programming and while doing um, in finance. I think that that's one industry I get a lot of encouragement from what we have to do and what we should do. But yes, with this kind of responsibility on our back, uh, we should be a little bit mindful. But yes, we have to start stepping towards that kind of automation where we reduce the manual efforts that we have been spending time in. And at the end of the day, it's again giving back to the society that a drug comes a day earlier because of something that has been automated. I think that is the goal that we're working for.
Yeah, really interesting. And Shadab, curious to hear your view. What does automation mean to you specifically in the context of obviously speed and but quality and the responsibility that as Rahul mentions towards society in terms of the work that statistical programmers have.
I mean, for me, what I have felt in my experience that it's sometimes tricky. Like, uh, first thing that automation for statistical programming, let's say end to end, I don't think it might affect the timing of the drug much, but yeah, it will surely affect the cost if it is done properly, because there are other constraints that delay the drug, and that's recruitment and other things that which take a lot of time. But in my opinion, like for example, there was one project that I worked which was end-to-end automation, where it's just like ETL tool where you put on extract, and it from C dash it comes to STTM, and you download the data, and it's done in one click. And it looks like, in theory, it looks like it's just one click, and we have automated the whole job of STTM programmer. And we used metadata and many techniques actually to automate that tool. But at the end of the day, what we found out, even if raw data is harmonized that was in C dash standard, and then our standard output standard is also strictly harmonized as SDTM, there was a lot of changes that no one can foresee. And then you get those change requests for each study, each deliverable, and those change requests somewhat amount not exactly same, but
Mm.
to the effort of statistical programming. So then
Yeah,
what happens is there is no point of automation,
yeah,
because I mean, if it's the same thing, if you have automated the process, but the support of that tool also takes much effort, then
yeah,
there is something, and it was discontinued later. So that is where the problem is, because the industry and is changing rapidly. It always changes. Like tomorrow there is, like in past there was one analysis for life test or survival analysis. Today there are competing risk associated with it. Now you once you have automated that particular table, I mean, it's not going to, you have to change that. You have to change the whole code. And tomorrow it could be something else.
right.
So that kind of change and keeping up with that kind of change is sometimes is hard to come up with end-to-end solutions. That is why if you see, most of the industry relies on macros, because
Yeah.
those are modular codes which are snippets of automation which you can call, and but it provides much more level of flexibility to the programmer.
Yeah.
So I think that the solution could be something like we could automate the helper processes around the whole statistical programming, and then leave that flexibility to the programmer if something changes in the study. And it's a balance. There is no formula to that. I mean, if someone does it good, even I don't know what is the solution to this, but that's the balance that I feel like that automation is, I mean, uh, uh, can be successful in the long run. So that is what I believe, actually, that the automation should, we should, as Rahul said, that we should start with a small task, and then make our way up to the point where we see what challenges we are facing on the way. Not just we came up with a project that we are going to automate end to end, and then after some time we felt like, okay, this is too huge to manage. So
Yeah, and it cannot be for a study, right? If it's automation, it has to be ongoing, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
If you automate one study or two studies for that matter, it's not an automation. Again, you have programmed it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even the challenge is in therapeutic areas as well. So therapeutic areas change the study design and everything by much significant difference. So to manage that, and then there are new domains coming, and then the versions of IG. So these kind of things are challenging for
But I
some.
think that is where maybe I'm jumping the gun, but maybe
Mhm.
that is where the role of Gen AI and other artificial intelligence tools would come in. Um, I I 100% agree that we cannot automate everything, but at least parts of it we can do.
Where do you, Rahul? Where do you think those, let's say, low hanging fruits lay? Specifically, is it SCTM creation? Is it Atom? Is it TFL? Is it the ARS coming out now? Where do you think most of the low hanging fruit for automation lies in?
Nothing can be done 100%. It has to be around 80% to 90%. Even if you say STTM, it cannot be done 100% because one or the other study would have some or the other complexity, some or the other things that may not have been collected in the standard way that the process has been built around. So that flexibility has to be left with programmers. But the standard, if you follow the standard right from collection, and again we can come to C dash, but right now what's stopping us is every company probably is trying to do their own interpretation, but there has to be one interpretation, and that is when I think we can move as an industry forward. The other low hanging fruits, I would say, would be parts of SCTM, parts of Atom, and parts of TLR. So there are now, I know, initiatives going around to standardize even outputs across the industry. So there are some standard outputs. For those standard outputs, there will be standard variables in atoms. For those standard atoms, there are standard variables in STTM. So that kind of flow, which is standard across the industry, is something which we should target at as a starting point. Once that is achieved, I think, let's say it is 30% what we are able to achieve. But that's 30% less work, right? 30% is automated.
Yeah.
From that lower percentage, we try to build on it and then try to keep on increasing those percentages, try to build on the standards, and then maybe we reach somewhere.
Shadab, would you agree to that, or would there anything you would add to what
I
Rahul said?
mean, I agree, actually, it's 100% correct. But there is one thing I would say, like automation for Adams would be quite. So the flow goes like you go to raw to SDTM, but our end result is always going to be TFLs. And Adam is for the traceability or link between, if I am looking at this output and I can go to Adam and directly see that, okay, this variable is there or not. So for me, the toughest part would be kind of maybe easiest low hanging fruit would be SDTM, to automate SDTM. And many companies have done it fixing the raw data standard. Again, as Rahul said, it's 80%, 70%, not all of it. And then TFLs can also be automated if we can agree on one kind of shell. But again, it changes heavily on therapeutic area, type of study design, and all those things changes. But there is scope for TFL automation in a sense that now we have tools where you can make interactive. You can even, I mean, if I don't know if TA will agree or not, or any other Cs, but for example, if you give an app to them to review your data, and a whole standard in that app, for example Shiny app or any other app, you give to them and they just go through it. And it's a long shot. I mean, I don't know what will be the repercussion on that level of legalities and other things. But yeah, I mean, that also can be done. But the toughest part is going to be the Adam, because I think Adam is somewhat. I need to say that okay, I'm generating this TFL, and okay, I have the variables very close to that TFL, so that I don't need to derive those variables again in my TFLs. So we need to have those Adam variables. So current Adam structure that we have, it will be tough to automate that. I think the toughest actually. But yeah, if we become flexible on the Adam structure, then I think it can become easier. But there are other parts around this process, not just HDTM, Adam, and TFS. There are other things then that can also be automated, like in parts and processes, and that once together they can work as an unit, an umbrella of applications that work together to facilitate the end-to-end programming.
Yeah, you kind of read my mind for the interactive outputs.
Yeah, I do you think it will be possible that somewhere down the line, regulatory authorities keep accept that kind of delivery? And
I would say certainly. I mean, if you would have asked me this question 5 years back, I would have said no. But lately, we have seen regulatory authorities being very supportive of adapting new technologies. They are ready now for accepting the programs or the outputs made in other languages. What I read was they were never supportive of just one language. So, which is I think our goal as well. Irrespective of the language that you program in, it should produce the same result. And lately, I think I can talk about FDA, where the article was published that they can they are ready to receive the submissions in R and in other languages as well.
yeah,
So even with the interactive things, maybe you can say Shiny or maybe an app built in Python,
hmm.
if they are able to see, if they trust the application and if they are able to see the results, I think that is the way, and maybe in coming years, that may become the standard of submission.
Really interesting, gentlemen. So, switching gears a little bit and staying with you, Rahul, what do you think of AI? And let's consider AI not just generative AI, but any sort of umbrella of automation, artificial intelligence. What's your take on AI, and what do you make of the hype in, let's say, let's call it the rest of the world?
I think the scope is immense. And if it does not matter to clinical programming, I think now is the time to think that it should matter. Sorry to make that statement, but
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of things that we have, and as I said, let's not try to achieve everything at one go. There are other things that are possible. For example, I've been working in oncology for all of my career, so I can talk about it. So there are some complex algorithms in evaluating the responses, be it hematology, be it solid tumors. And I think every company would have faced a time where they were struggling with the response criteria that are available to us. If we already have a technology which we can utilize, who can learn those algorithms, they're made for it. Why not use it? And and the way that we do is we will will have the response collected from investigator. We will program our own response, and then we will have an adjudication on that response again. So we are kind of validating it three times. Why not train an AI on that and have the same response with the quality that we have been expecting? Yeah, it may take time. It may not be tomorrow, but we can build that and then also kind of validate it through the time that yes, this is something which is giving us the appropriate result and just bring it to us. I mean, the technology is available. The problem is there. The technology is available. The solution is also something that we know. Why not work towards that solution? And at the end of the day, if it kind of simplifies the life of everyone involved in development, then why not? The second thing I would say, I mean, first thing is these algorithms that are there, which are tricky, and I'm sure there would be other algorithms in other therapeutic areas. The other thing that I think which where AI can be particularly helpful is documentation and standardization.
Yeah.
Uh, as a pro, as a statistical programmer or clinical programmer combined, we try to maintain a highest level of quality in programming and the data that we deliver. But somewhere it kind of lacks in the documentation. And if that kind of documentation is also kind of the quality is improved, I think that is where the AI can come into picture and give us, say for example, you want to derive a variable in your new study, you can go back to your previous 10 studies, ask the probably a bot to tell us how it has been done along the compounds. It can go into the program, it can go into the documentation itself and give you the 5 ways of doing, and you choose which way you want to do. And this is something which is happening, which is possible today.
Yeah.
And in our industry, we're not doing it. I mean, maybe someone is doing it, but it's not out yet. So someone has to kind of pitch in and start doing it.
I mean, I would certainly admit that at Verisian we have actually a lot of thoughts around, especially around documentation from code. Because if you go from a very dense prompt, in this case, let's say a query or code, you can actually generate a lot of very good summaries. So, for example, that or English text that actually describes what's being done, which could be used both in documentation as well as summaries for stakeholders that are involved. Shadab, in your case, in your organization, in your teams, what are people thinking about AI, and what's your take on it?
I would say that people are, it's just there is this hype for AI and then the practical applications. But our whole industry, what I feel is that in some seminars like Fuse and all, I have seen people trying prototyping with the small use cases, but I have not seen any big solution, something that actually solves. I mean, someone might have done it and might be, it's a big industry, but I mean, I have not seen. But yeah, people want to do it. But the problem with sitting at the intersection of three fields where pharma, statistics, computer is that sometimes you become jack of all and master of none. That happens.
Nice.
And then what happens is that you are a bit, because see, it takes a lot of knowledge. I mean, it's very easy for us to implement those algorithms or AI, because you are already doing something related with statistics, so it's easy
Yeah.
to grasp that technology. But because that exposure is not there, there is a little, I mean, little lag from other industry, not little, much, I would say. But yeah, but what I believe is like there are two things. One is overall industry, so it is being used at much scale. Like you have seen the news that the drug, that molecule discovery through AI is now in clinical trial, so it's getting used. But yeah, this part of the process from where the data is getting collected to the TFLs and reporting, this is a bit, you would say, I mean, I don't see much things happening, because it's the process is like, it's not the start of the process, and the application is a bit tricky, that how would we implement, where would we implement. So the one thing that Rahul said is the best use case is for the documentation, for, I mean, the technical documents like protocol and SAP, if you are programming, sometimes even very simple use case, you might not find or understand some concepts described, and you just make a sandbox search kind of thing, and you put your question and you get the answer. That is also helpful. So these kind of search and document management, all these things can be done. For the programming part, I don't think it would be possible, because we no organization has enough codes to train an LLM,
Yeah.
and there is no way to come together and pool those codes and
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
because of the data security. So I don't think it could be possible. Could be something like GitHub Copilot, something like when you are programming and it shows like, okay, you can write this,
Yeah.
but I don't think the whole program can be generated unless and until you have enough data. But then there are other concepts like I read somewhere, it's something federated learning, where you train your model like on your computer, transfer that model on someone else, some other organization, another organization, and it comes trained. So there is no data sharing, but those weights are somehow on different data. It is changed and the model comes mature to you. But that's again, you need a very strong community for that to achieve, actually. Like something like, again, GitHub or Stack Overflow, but those type of communities in pharma, which are purely technical communities, to solve those problems. I think that is the only thing that could somehow solve the problem. But again, it's a very big issue, that getting enough data to train your models.
But
And
I would say, sorry, I would say we are moving in that direction now. Now there are communities across companies where we have involvement of experts from different companies all in one place like GitHub. I think Farmhours is
Farm hours, yeah.
one where there is involvement from across the companies, like, and I think that they're doing a great job in bringing in the data from each company and training the AI bots and training those models. Just to add, I think we also have to consider machine learning, where we have a lot of data in data management. I know it's kind of out of scope from statistical programming, but that is one area of scope that I feel that we have. In a company itself, there is a lot of data. There may be like some 100 studies ongoing. We would have a lot of data to train any model on that, and that is somewhere I think we can leverage those kind of technologies that are available to us.
the final topic we wanted to discuss, which is what are the success strategies to be successful in statistical programming. And it is fascinating that you have to have both an understanding and a passion for these interlocking fields. You need to be a programmer, not a SAP programmer, as you found out. You need to
Yeah.
know statistics, which obviously overlaps with AI, and you also need to know biology in general, and then
Yeah.
specialize within your own therapeutic area. To stay with you, Raul, what do you think are for today? Both, what are the skills that you need to be successful in statistical programmer today? But what I'm really interested in, what do you think are tomorrow's skills?
I think statistical programming role is one which has kind of evolved faster than any other role in development, I would say. And why I say that is, if you go back 5 years down the line, there were not much talk about R programming, Python, and other open source coming into statistical programming. Within these 5 years, I think we have seen not just talking, we have seen the actual implementation. I remember I gave my first poster on open source programming in 2012, right? And from that time, it was just talks. And but I see that getting implemented now. But coming back to your question for the success today's, as a statistical programmer, I would say we have to be technically strong. That is true. But that cannot be the only criteria that can make you successful in stats programming. And that is very different from other fields that are there currently. As Shadab said already, you have to be jack of all trades, at least.
At
Maybe
least.
I would say master of one and jack of all trades. So you have to know statistics as well. You at least the basic ones. You need to know what
Yeah.
a survival analysis is, what a normalization is, what odds ratio is. So if someone comes to you, you should understand those principles, and if you know that, you can apply those fundamentals to your program, which will make it more robust. It'll give you the actual results. So that is one thing. Not just be technically strong, but also sound in concepts of statistics.
And what do you make of this, Shadab? What are some of the key skills and opportunities for, especially for new entrants coming into the field?
So first thing I need to correct that line. I also think now that you should be master of one and jack of rest. That would be preferable for someone coming in. And again, strive to be master of all, which is not possible. But yeah, again, you should do it. But what I feel for someone coming in is that you just as soon as you step into the industry, you need to forget that you are bound to some course or technology or anything, that you have studied this and this you have to work, because then again you have come into an area where all the things are merging and you have to make sense of those things. So that is one thing. Second thing, as Rahul said, again I'll reiterate that because now that is very important. That is programming. So there is a difference between learning programming and learning a language. Few
Yeah.
years back, you learn SAS, you do certifications, you can get into industry, you have to but now the situation is different, because when programming languages change, the only thing that can help you is the programming, the concepts of programming, how any programming languages work, and norm basic concept like data structures and object oriented programming, all these things, because that is something that was missing from this industry. And because coming from the technical background, I have struggled on other fronts. So because I can say that okay, this is the things that we have to learn, and that is the programming concepts first and foremost. And then, because once these languages will change, after 10 years you might hear that we are moving to Python, because to be honest, I find Python better than R in terms of usage. So it, or any new programming languages comes, like S became R can become something else, it will change. So to adapt to that situation we need, but that's not all. Like once you have that skill, that helps. But the main thing is that you know enough about statistics. For example, very simple things that we read and forget, like what is p value, what is the significance. Again, if you are ask someone like for many years I could not make sense of it. I had to go to watch videos like, okay, what is it actually? I mean, in some sense you get the idea, but then when in practical sense you see that it means in something entirely else. Small things
Yeah.
have very special meanings actually. Confidence intervals are far greater importance than in the textbook. So those kind of things, starting from small to even survival analysis and all other analysis, that you have to know. And then again pharma, and that is where I struggle the most actually, because I mean these two things, mathematics, and it was easy to adapt, but for pharma for me was much difficult actually, because I did not like chemistry in, in school and college, and then
Mm.
I came to see these terms and tried to make sense of it. But then there is this thing that when you want to learn something, and you need to learn something, because if you don't, you won't understand the rest of it what you are doing. So when that what do you call, like that thing that you have to do now, that comes, and then you go to like protocol shape, and you are learning about mechanism of action of that disease, and how but some inhibitors work in cancer, and what type of other inhibitors are there. And then that's kind of exciting, and then you get into that zone where okay, you can relate all those things, and you then all of a sudden your perspective changes. And not all of a sudden, I mean within a year, when you start looking at these things, your perspective changes, and you'll program the same, your programming will be the same, your skills will be the same, but your quality will improve, uh, I mean drastically, just because now you know that okay, this could be wrong, just by looking at it. So those kind of things. And for your question, that's when someone is entering the field, i I mean it's hard actually, not to lie, it's hard, because
Yeah.
I mean I have seen this trend now in India, especially, that a lot of freshers are being hired into companies directly from college, but earlier it was not there much. And it is hard in a sense that, again, the same problem. How would you know all three things? So, what I believe is that a training program for the freshers, if you are hiring, that that is a must for companies, because that is the only way to fast pace the learning and get into the system and start working. So it goes both ways. It's not something that I can just tell the freshers to do. I can also, there is a responsibility on organizations as well, which is being done. I'm not saying which is being done, and like Fuse is connecting with university students and all those things. So that is being done. So it goes both ways actually.
So with that, I want to thank the both of you very much for sharing all of your interesting thoughts and stories on automation, on AI, on the skills necessary to succeed in statistical programming. I also want to thank our listeners for staying until the end of this episode of the Verisian Community Podcast. Any final comments, remarks, or anything that you'd like to impart our listeners before we wrap up this episode?
I think I would say be true to your work, be true to what you do, and success will follow.
I mean, I agree with Rahul. How can I top that?
Yeah, yeah. No,
So, yeah.
thank you so much. For any listeners if you have questions you'd like us to ask or have any suggestions for speakers to come on the podcast, let me know. With that, thank you so much again. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope to see you at the next podcast. Bye bye.